Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. If I can move straight on to the agenda, which is item number 1, which is the evacuation procedure. If the fire alarms go off, we're not expecting them to, we've not been told there's any practice, so if they go off, we'll treat them as for real. And if we can vacate this room either side, the doors either side, down the stairs and out the front and meet across the road at the Yorkshire Bank. If anybody requires any help to get out, give us a shout, we'll make sure that happens. Also, it's a timely reminder as well to either switch your mobile phones off or put them onto silent. I also need to advise the meeting that this meeting will be recorded and later put out on social media. Thank you. I don't think anybody else is recording it by the council today. Item number 2 is to receive apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Daffern, Councillor Tony Lloyd's here now, Councillor Gisane and Councillor Ian Lloyd, who may be late. Have I missed anybody? No? No, Jim. Thank you. Well, that's for Councillor Condical. Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of January. Are you happy that I do that? Are you happy that I confirm those minutes? Yes. Thank you. Item number 4 is to receive declarations of interest. Item. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Item number 5, declarations of contact. If I can just say in relation to the item on the Royal Oak Public House, I was at a residents' meeting where it was discussed. Councillor Tandy.
Item number 1, Chair, the Labour Road application. I have been approached about this application, but I have not given any reasons for.
Okay, thank you. Which takes us on to item number 6, the applications for planning permission, where the public have indicated a wish to speak. If I can just run through that process for those people that haven't been here before. The officers will present the report. Following on from that, I'll take the speakers in the order on the list we've got. And just for members' information, if I can point out that on item number 2, we have got a Councillor Condical wishes to speak in support. And item number 3, if you can add in Councillor Neil Phillips as an objector. Yeah, so, right, going back to that then. Once the officers have made their presentations, it'll be, once something's been moved and seconded, it'll be over for the committee to debate the matter and hopefully reach a decision. Normally we do make a decision on the day, but on some occasions the matter might be deferred for a site visit or for further information, but normally it's done on the day. Okay, so that takes us on to item number 1, 34 Leyland Road, Nuneaton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of 6 houses, including the formation of a new access and the demolition of the existing dwelling. Objections have been received as detailed on the agenda relating to issues such as the impact on highway safety, loss of privacy, increased noise and disturbance, and that the application involves garden grabbing. Notwithstanding these objections, the application is also being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Margrave. The principle of developing the land for residential dwellings has been established by virtue of a resolution to grant permission for the erection of 6 houses back in 2006. However, this permission was never issued as the Section 106 legal agreement was never signed by the applicant. However, the planning policy framework against which the previous application was considered has changed significantly since then. The proposal falls within land which carries no specific designation in safe policies of the local plan, nor is it earmarked for any particular land use in the emerging borough plan. The surrounding area is predominantly residential, and therefore the principle of residential development is acceptable. Turning to the issue of garden grabbing, residential gardens are no longer classed as previously developed land since the publication of the National Planning Policy Framework in 2012. However, the lack of a brownfield designation simply means that the previous presumption in favour of development on such brownfield sites does not exist. However, there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development as outlined in the NPPF. In relation to residential amenity, properties in Peveril Close, which are those ones here, are to the southwest of the site. Plot 6, which is that one there on the application site, is the nearest plot to these properties. There are 3 windows proposed in that elevation, but all these are non-habitable. The separation distance between the rear of the properties on Peveril Close and the side wall of plot 6 is 14 metres, which complies with distance standards in the Residential Design Guide. Plot 6 is also set approximately 2 metres from the boundary, and therefore it is not considered that there will be significant impact on their rear gardens. In terms of the impact of noise from the access road, Environmental Health do not object to the proposal, providing a 2 metre high fence is provided along the access, which would adequately mitigate any harm and could be controlled by a condition. Turning to visual amenity, the proposal involves demolition of the existing detached property at number 34. The access would lead to a cul-de-sac serving the proposed dwellings, 4 detached and a pair of semis. The design of the properties is fairly standard and modern in appearance, featuring gable roofs, gablet features over the windows, headers and sills. The development creates a fairly cohesive group on its own. Although Leyland Road is predominantly a straight road with houses set in a linear fashion, there is a small cul-de-sac between 12 and 22 Leyland Road, and the properties on Avenue nearest the site do not follow the predominantly linear pattern. In addition to this, the new development at the old school site has created development in depth, which this proposal would be set in context with. In terms of parking, the council does not have any car parking standards. The application proposes 12 parking spaces. Previous applications have been refused, including the most recent previous application, on the grounds that the required visibility displays were not achieved. Highways have raised an objection, and that's detailed on the addendum. It was a mistake on the agenda that said no objection, but it's actually an objection which is detailed on the addendum. They've submitted the same objection as on previous applications, and the proposed access hasn't changed since that previous refusal, and therefore the reasons for refusal on previous applications are therefore relevant. There are 4 trees near the site covered by a tree preservation order. Of these trees, the one nearest to the site is an ash within the garden of 32 Leyland Road, which is that one there. Parks and Countryside have requested conditions that help to protect the root protection areas of these trees, which is considered acceptable. The recommendation is therefore refusal on highway safety grounds as detailed on the agenda and addendum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. The first speaker that we have on this item is Councillor Margrave.
Thank you, Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just clarify that I asked for the item to come to committee if it was down for approval. It's down for refusal. However, 20 objections have been received, and I understand that is one of the reasons it is here. I'm here to support the residents today who will be speaking in a moment. I want to thank the residents on the committee who over the last 14 years have continued to refuse what is an inappropriate development within this area. The objections have always been the same, and this application keeps coming back around every 2 years, I would think. It's a dangerous access, and the access doesn't appear to have changed. There will be noise that will affect the residents neighbouring and disturbance both for the use of access. There'll also be damage to a tree. The tree is, I think, 400 years old, which is really part of the history of the area. And so this committee has previously upheld the decision to refuse this application, and I would ask that you do the same today. In particular, in relation to the collection of rubbish bins, Highways have made it clear that they have concerns about bin wagons journeying to the houses. That would mean that bins potentially would have to either go on the road, which would cause an obstruction for the school children or for people who are disabled, or indeed there is a bin store which happens to be right next door to the kitchen window and side door of number 36, meaning they would experience a smell and noise that would be intolerable. Finally, I would also ask, because this application's been here so many times and had a real detrimental impact on the residents, I would ask the applicant to think very carefully about resubmitting this if it's refused, and also remind committee that this could have a profound impact on residents if it were approved, and they've spent a great deal of time fighting against this, and it's also cost the council a great deal of money. So I would ask that you refuse this application for the reasons as listed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? No. If we can move on to J.R. Everett.
Displays have remained the same throughout the planning application history for this site. They are the bare minimum that Highways may apply for an access to and from a lightly utilised roadway with low speeds limit below 20 miles an hour. Leyland Road is not lightly used and has a higher 30 mile an hour speed limit. The traffic recording data logger was put on the road recently, and I've looked in the planning file to see if I could see some log data. I'd like to see the raw data and to analyse it, and I was interested to see what the peak speeds might be or the volume, traffic volumes. Anyway, couldn't find it. My home is situated opposite. Sorry, I've got the shakes. My home is situated opposite the about half a metre below the site access and is in danger. It would be the default trajectory from a collision here. The nature of traffic along Leyland Road is dynamic and changes throughout the day. During the mornings and evenings, traffic is very heavy. During the middle of the day, the road empties of parked cars when residents go to work, and the speeds pick up with a steady flow of regular traffic. After the 2006 application, the Highways officer reviewed case studies, traffic guidance and a survey of Leyland Road. He realised that Highways mistakenly hadn't previously considered the impact of heavy vehicles and buses. It has been revealed that 400 lorries and buses with 2,500 vehicular movements over a 10-hour period. Soon the traffic burden will increase with extra cutting through to and from the many new homes off the Longshoot A5 to the Griff Island. The current Highways officer went on to state that anything less than a 2.4 metre setback by 70 metre splay would be dangerous. The applicants for this site have been refused ever since this committee.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, if you can just turn your thing. It's all right, we've got to get used to it as well. And can I just say, it's too late for you now, but you don't have to stand up when you're speaking if you don't want to. By all means, do if you want to, but... Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Lindsay Thomas.
I want to draw the committee's attention to the problems raised by the proposed erection of an acoustic fence along the boundary of 32 and 34 Leyland Road. In the past, both planning and an inspector have rejected an acoustic fence as a noise mitigation measure. Since then, the projected volume of traffic that would use the intended road will have increased. For instance, family cars are much bigger. The need for adult children to remain in the family home means that properties can have numerous cars. Food and courier deliveries are frequent and 7 days a week. All this will affect the character and amenity of the gardens of number 32 and 36 and the habitable rooms in our properties. The planning file shows that there has been discussion as to whether an acoustic fence can even be erected within the root structure of the protected ash tree in the garden of number 32. As far as I can see, no conclusions were reached as to how this could be achieved. Is it to be left to chance that A.R. Cartwright may or may not be able to erect this fence? Will the developer be allowed to go ahead regardless? A comment in the planning file states that the acoustic fence should be retained and maintained at all times in the future. Just how is this to be achieved? The existing fence is the responsibility of number 34. Its elevated position means that fence panels have been destroyed in storms. The owner of 34, A.R. Cartwright, has replaced 10 of these 22 panels in recent years. Darren Grant informs me that the owners of the 6 new properties will be responsible for the retention and maintenance of this boundary in the future. This acoustic fence has no purpose as far as their own properties are concerned. If it is damaged, say by high winds or a large vehicle unable to achieve the tight turning point, I have to knock on 6 doors and ask my neighbours to pay for it to be repaired, reminding them of a planning condition or a clause in their deeds. I have been advised that if they fail to comply, then the council can take them to court. Would you like to find yourself in this position? Has the council the will or the money to take such action? One thing's for certain. A.R. Cartwright will have made his profit and be long gone.
Clarification? Councillor Tromans. Anything you need to come back on, Claire? No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons as printed? Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Tromans.
Before I start, Chair, I just need to clarify. I was excluded from the beginning of this meeting. I was excluded from the beginning of this meeting. Am I now allowed to take part fully and vote on all the remaining items? Sympathy with the residents, and from what I've heard. I do want us to be absolutely clear on a couple of things. I'd like to ask the officer, just for a bit of clarity, Councillor Margrave said that the applications have always been turned down, but in my papers, and as the officer said, that this application actually has been approved in the past, but the developer just didn't sign the Section 106, and so it lapsed. I wonder if she could just clarify what the situation is in terms of previous approvals of planning here. The other thing is, I think it would be helpful for us all to understand the mechanism for making sure that fences, like acoustic fences and stuff like that, are maintained, and what the council does. Do they go to Cartwrights, or do they have to knock on each of the 6 doors as was described, because that sounds most unsatisfactory. And the third point I'd like the officer's view on is the fact that it seems we are rejecting this, or recommending it for rejection, based purely on the visibility splay on the entrance and exit, and yet County Highways haven't put forward an objection. We couldn't get them to support that. Does that mean if we reject this, that the applicant will just win on appeal? Thank you.
For that last point, unless I've got it wrong and officers will tell me different, the county have objected to it as is on the addendum.
In relation to the highways point, I did refer to it in my presentation that highways have objected, and it is mentioned on the addendum.
So you have
Councillor Tandy.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty obvious for those of us who actually live in the area and know Leyland Road very, very well, the difficulties that this planning application would cause to the road users and also to the local residents, which is why I was pleased to see and pleased to second that the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. This application does keep coming back here, and consistently the Highways Authority have made an objection to the planning application because of the difficulties, especially about the visibility displays. It is very, very... Leyland Road, as I said to anyone who knows it, there are occasions during the day, as the resident said, when, yes, you can ride up and down there quite comfortably. But on a very personal basis, at busy times, I will go any other way but use Leyland Road because how busy the traffic is down there. So I fully support the rejection of this planning application, Chair, and support the wishes of the resident.
Thank you. Is there any other member? Councillor Longden.
Recommended for refusal. However, Chair, bearing in mind the meeting we had before this, which Councillor Tromans didn't attend, is the objection from Highways strong enough and powerful enough to back up any refusal? It is. Thank you.
In case people didn't hear because there's no microphone there, the answer was yes, it can be supported. Is there any other member? No? In that case, it's been moved and seconded that the committee refuse the planning permission for the reasons as printed. All those in favour of that? That's unanimous. Okay, that's refused. If we can move on to item number 2, the Royal Oak Public House, Nuneaton Road, Bedworth.
This application is for the retention of children's play equipment and the continued use of land as a pub beer garden at the Royal Oak on Nuneaton Road in Bedworth. A letter and a petition of support has been received as detailed on the agenda. The site has already been changed to a pub beer garden and play equipment sited on the land. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, outdoor noise created by the proposal will carry much further than the internal kinds of noise associated with a public house with no beer garden. There are residential properties in close proximity to the site, the nearest ones being number 4 Royal Oak Yard, which is that property there, and 63 Nuneaton Road. Number 4, Royal Oak Yard, immediately joins the eastern boundary of the site, and their private amenity space adjoins the beer garden with a close boarded fence. The rear private amenity space of number 63, which is that property there, adjoins the north and west of the site. Even though this latest application has been accompanied by acoustic screening details, Environmental Health have objected, as they have done on a previously submitted application which was refused, on the grounds of noise, as it is considered that the noise and disturbance from the beer garden would be too significant given the likely levels of noise and the unsociable hours in which the worst of the noise would likely to be. They have stated that whilst the acoustic screening could help noise spill at ground level, this would do little to help the nearby 2-storey properties who have living accommodation split over 2 floors or to their garden space. In terms of visual amenity, the beer garden is to the rear of the existing pub, but is accessible from Royal Oak Yard. There is a close boarded fence along this boundary. It is not considered that the beer garden or play equipment have a detrimental impact on the visual amenity of the area, and there have been no objections in relation to highway safety. The recommendation is therefore one of refusal on the grounds of the impact on the residential amenity of surrounding properties as detailed on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. First speaker on this item, Robert Williams.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address this meeting on behalf of my client. You will have noticed that the application is for the retention of the play area. In respect to this, my client, before he started any work, approached the council. The response was it did not need planning. Wishing to be compliant, he also applied for an alcohol licence covering the area. Your authority granted the appropriate licence. It was only after this that work started. This committee will be aware that in 2016, 20 public houses throughout the country close each week. This public house is itself struggling to stay open, and the play area was created to help attract families to use the facility. Since the garden has been open, there have been no complaints from the neighbours, and indeed the neighbours referred to have all written letters of support, and there are no letters against the objection. This is a public asset, and the petition, which with over 200 signatures, shows support within the area from local people. The Environmental Health Department have taken a preemptive strike approach to this development to stop the development, though there is no proof of any noise complaints, and considering it's been there now for some 9 months, some complaints would normally have been omitted by now. It is not correct to say that conditions cannot be placed on the play area, as this is a standalone application. My client is willing to accept a condition that restricts the use after 9 o'clock in the evening, in line with his licence, or any conditions you deem relevant. I would ask that you disregard the Environment and Health Department comments, and as there are no other planning reasons against the application, that you approve this application with the relevant restrictions. This will be in line with the local population wishes and help secure the pub's long-term future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? I've just got one. You mentioned towards the start of your... It's all right, you don't have to stand up. You mentioned towards the start of your presentation that you were advised that you didn't need planning permission. Could I ask who gave you that advice? Well, so Mrs. Lloyd is in licensing? Mrs. Lloyd is in licensing, isn't she? Okay.
She said to me, she said to me at the time, I didn't need planning permission, all I needed was an extension of the drinking hours, which I applied for the same day I came.
Are there any other points of clarification? No?
Chair, could I just ask...
Councillor Pomfret.
To do with the children's play equipment, or to by itself, or to do with it being used as a beer garden, or the two together, or what exactly? Thank you.
If a points of clarification to the person that's spoken. Is that okay? All right? If you can just make a note of that and come back on it when we. The second speaker, Councillor Condacourt.
He's not here, Chair.
Just to be doubly sure, is Councillor Condacourt? No.
He's gone home.
Yeah. Appears to have gone home. Okay. In which case, can I, to enable debate to take place, to move the recommendation which is to refuse planning permission? Is that seconded? Okay, just before I bring members in, do you want to cover that point Councillor Pomfret just made clear, please?
Yes, the application is for both. It's for the continued use of the area at the back as a beer garden and the siting of the children's play equipment.
Thank you.
Any member? Councillor Tony Lloyd.
I'm going to test the committee's thing to have the impact on the noise of people. I would like to have a site, and I think it's the reason I that because it's a site visit is because I'm looking at where it is. The site is massive. It is a big area, fenced round, and we have them in here. And I've been trying to balance really with my own mind, which is, you know, because it is quite open. I mean, round the back of it, it really is an open area, whatever. It isn't as if it's condensed in too close. And I thought, well, if it's fenced and because it is a big area and the impact, I don't think it would have the impact on there, but I'm quite happy to get views of us. So I would like to, I test the water. I say to you, go and have a look at this because this is a little bit unusual. On this, it is a little bit unusual, and let's go and have a look and then at least we're being honest and fair to the people down there and to the owner, because I'm sorry on that. So I move that, Chair. If somebody will second, let's go and have a look and see what it's all about.
A site visit for those reasons. That's seconded.
Time to understand exactly what the licence terms and conditions are, because it seems that licensing has been granted for a beer garden, albeit not the play equipment, so we need to really get to the bottom of that in the meantime.
Well, that information can be available if you want, but that is a licensing condition, not a planning condition. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded a site visit, so I'll take that as the amendment. Does anybody wish to speak on the amendment? Well, I will, because I think for it is an interesting one, and I think it probably is balanced. And although I used to use the pub years ago, I've not been in there for a very long time. And as I said at the start of the meeting, this was discussed at our Old Collycroft Residents Association that I'm invited to as a councillor, and they did have concerns, but I note that they've made no concerns or objections known. Similarly, there's no neighbour objections, and indeed there's letters and a petition in favour. So I think it would be valuable for members that don't know the area quite as well to see that, and you know, against the possible impact on the neighbouring properties. Although I didn't see it in the report, it was mentioned in the speaker mentioned about the viability of the pub, and we all know how many pubs have been lost. So I'm not sure whether at the end of the day the viability issue is a planning thing, but as Councillor Troman said, it will give us time for that to come back if members want to agree it. So I did have, before the amendment was moved, I did have Councillor Gran and Longden down to speak. Did you still wish to do that? Yeah. Councillor Gran.
I'm happy to support the amendments. The only, well, we're going to visit, and the problem seems to be that the Borough Council are objecting to is noise. Surely when we're visiting, it'll be fairly quiet because it'll be in the day and it won't be at a time when it's being used as a beer garden. That's just one point I wanted to put forward, but I'm happy to do the site visit if everyone else is.
Opportunity for you to visit when it is open. Councillor Longden. Councillor Ian Lloyd.
It's just given I'll hang on until the site visit, but what I would like to know is, can noise be governed or legislated by the Environmental Health if something like this was passed?
Yes, noise is does fall within the remit of environmental health, and if complaints were received, they have legislation that can look into that issue as a statutory nuisance.
Anybody else? No? Claire? Anything else? You happy about the reasons for the site visit, the impact on the neighbouring properties? In that case, it's been moved and seconded a site visit. All those in favour of that? 9. Hang on, there's some confusion over that. I'll do it again. All those in favour of the site visit? 9. And against? No abstentions. Sorry? Okay, so we'll make a site visit prior to our next council meeting. If you need any other information on how that's conducted, please contact the officers. Okay? Okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us on to item number 3, which is 120 Manor Court Road, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of a 5-bedroom dwelling to a house in multiple occupation, comprising of 7 units. No additional extensions or changes to the external appearance of the house are proposed as part of this application. Objections have been received as detailed on the agenda and addendum, raising issues such as concerns over increased parking, devaluation of property, and the impact on the character of the building within the conservation area. Devaluation of property is not a planning consideration, and no changes are proposed to the external appearance of the building. Planning permission is not required for a change of use of a dwelling to a house in multiple occupation for 6 units, and this application is for 7 units. Officers consider that the principle of the use is acceptable, therefore. The site is within close proximity to district centres and the town centre, with good transport links and amenities and services. In terms of residential amenity, as no external alterations are proposed, it is not considered it would lead to increased overlooking or loss of privacy. Concerns have been raised that the proposal would lead to increased disturbance by way of noise and antisocial behaviour. However, it should be taken into account that the house could already be used as a house in multiple occupation for 6 people without the need for planning permission. As such, officers consider it would be difficult to differentiate between noise and disturbance in connection with this use and the comings and goings of 1 additional unit. Warwickshire County Council Highways have objected based on the impact on parking demand and the implications for demand for on-street parking with the surrounding side roads. However, the existing property is a 5-bedroom house and could be converted into a HMO for 6 people without planning permission, which would bring no requirement to provide any on-street parking. Also, the existing house currently has no existing off-street parking. The site is in close proximity to district centres, the town centre and public transport facilities, and officers consider that due to this location and transport options, there may not be full car dependency at the site. The recommendation is therefore approval, subject to conditions as detailed on the agenda. Thank you.
Sorry. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just go through the application, basically. First of all, they're not semi-detached, built 18 nation area. People know the area there. 4 houses. There's actually 8 in the block. The block on the right-hand side there has got planning permission for a bed and breakfast. The house next to this particular application is already a house of multiple occupation. And in the row of 8, there are already 2 houses of multiple occupation, although one investigating at the moment doesn't even have a licence. I know there is permitted development. That is unfortunate, and I think that's probably the strongest thing in the applicant's favour. However, having said that, I mean, we are instigating... it's becoming more and more of a trend in the conservation area of these lovely big houses being turned into houses of multiple occupation. Again, all the way through the ward as well. Objections from residents, although house prices are not part of planning, from a resident's point of view, it is a very emotive part of living next door to a house that was a family residence, was not a house of multiple occupation at the present moment in time. It was lived in by a family that is now becoming a house of multiple occupation up to 6. If I had good arguments against the planning law of permitted development brought in 2010, 2011, to refuse this, I would do, because the area is changing. The character is changing. I also understand from an officer's point of view that, well, it's only 1 more. There is no parking already, but why 1 more? If there's permitted development for 6, that was what the law said. So 6 rather than 7. I don't want this area turning into bedsit land any more than what it's becoming. And in fact, we've started talking with planning about putting the conservation area into an area where designated, where houses of multiple occupation will not go. Hopefully we will do that. You've only got to look, and this is no disrespect to the applicant at all, but if you go down Manor Court Road, you know which houses are houses of multiple occupation because no work is ever done on the outside. There are bins in the yards, litter builds up in the alleyways. Okay, it's down to the landlord, but the landlord isn't there all the while. I do not want to encourage any more than 6. I don't want to encourage any at all, but I will hope you refuse this.
Any points of clarification? No? Anything you need to come back on, Claire? Okay, to enable debate to take place, can I... Oh, I'm sorry, it's because I went to Council. I apologise. Mr. Keeler.
The committee in giving me the opportunity to speak, and so I can emphasise the most important points. I, Harinder Singh Keeler, support the planning permission at 120 Manor Court Road for change of use for C3 to C4. It is in nobody's interest to have 7 cars or 6 cars under the permitted planning permission parked outside of the house. As an experienced HMO landlord, I let the rooms out by basis of stipulating parking as a precursor, i.e. 2 rooms allowed parking outside the house if there is a demand for it. Many of the HMO residencies that I run don't have a need for car parking. If they do, then it's stipulated on the tenancy that there's only 2 cars allowed to be parked outside the property overnight. Rubbish. Experience from my own household is that when my wife and I go to work in the morning, the bins are put out in the morning and they're put back in the evening when we get back. I am sure this is the case for the majority of the households. However, my HMO bins are brought back by the cleaner on that day and are left not overnight on the street. The bins are also neatly numbered with the house number rather than painted on in a random fashion. On a main road to the city centre, it is important to keep a clean and tidy appearance. The example I can give to the councillors is 9 to 11 Riversley Road. The appearance of that house cosmetically is better than many of the residents' houses on Riversley Road. Again, there is parking for only 2 people on that house. The garden will be basically maintained to be of low maintenance, so it's easy to maintain by the gardener. Vermin is not an issue that I've ever come across. If the house is kept clean and meets all regulations, if there is an issue in the area due to the way the sewers are located, then I will seek environmental health. The front of the house is listed. I understand this. Phase 2 of the development will address the front of the house and it will be painted and brought up to the standard that is required. I must note to the councillors that there are owner-occupied houses that are left in desperate disrepair, and these can be pointed out if the councillors need to find the residents who own these houses. It's not a consequence of HMO residents only. As I will have to gain a HMO licence from the council, the responsibilities that I have are fully known. Any antisocial behaviour can be controlled by making sure the correct tenants are chosen. Also, the council do have direct powers and they can impose on irresponsible HMO landlords in order to mitigate noise and any kind of bad behaviour. I am investing a large amount of money in the purchase of this house and in the modernising of this property. It is not in my best interest to devalue the area by not managing the HMO correctly. In fact, I think with my past experience and proven track record of HMO management re-renovation, I will basically make sure that the impact to the area is good.
Thank you. No? Claire, anything you need to come back on? No? In that case, can I to enable debate to take place to move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as printed? Is that seconded? Okay, thank you. Any member? Councillor Longdon.
25 years ago, I think it was now, getting on that way, I lived at number 122, which is a house of multiple occupation, and I lived in what is termed on these papers as the front lounge, which became a bedroom, so it was a bedsit. And my son lived upstairs in bedroom number 4, I think it was. So it's very much, I can identify with this because I've seen it and lived in it for a while. It filled a need at that particular time. Wasn't a very happy time, but it filled a need. The only thing that I could think of is the parking on Manor Court Road. It's desperate enough as it was desperate then. It's got it even more desperate now. However, the applicant has said that he'll limit the parking to 2 cars, which is probably what the family would be. So, providing that could be maintained, it wouldn't change the aspect of that particular property in terms of parking outside. So, much as I take on board what Councillor Phillips has said and the overall effect of the area becoming bedsit land, until such times we do get some policy in place or we're allowed to do things, we're not going to be able to refuse applications like these, simply because we don't like them or has a multiple occupation. The thing is, in my day, it filled a need, and I'm sure it fills a need these days. And on that basis, I'm afraid I will have to support the application.
I don't really understand some aspects of this. At the moment, the house accommodates 6 people, I've been told. I assume that's on the basis that there are 5 bedrooms and that there are would be 2 people occupying one of those rooms, and that we're going from that situation to there being 7 rooms. No, I thought I got to... Could you also at the same time as clearing that misunderstanding, what the rules are around HMOs? Is it 1 room, 1 person? Is that a rule, or are there any limitations on how many people can be accommodated in 1 room?
It's a dwelling, 5-bedroomed dwelling. I don't know how many people live in there as a family at the moment. I don't know, but potentially a number of people could live in that house as a single family using a 5-bedroom house. When I mentioned 6 persons, that was in relation to changing from a dwelling house, a C3 dwelling house, to a house in multiple occupation for 6 persons under permitted development, which didn't require permission. Now, in terms of how many people could live in each room, I would imagine that would fall under the licence that the housing section would issue and fall under their legislation.
Thank you. I think we're not really moving from... It's not that clear that we're moving from 6 to 7. We could be moving from more than 6 to more than 7. Is that am I interpreting the situation correctly?
They could, as I said, it's a 5-bedroom house. They could change that tomorrow into a house in multiple occupation for 6 people without requiring planning permission. That's what the planning legislation allows them to do. That wouldn't require an application. What we're considering today is, because it's more than 6, the applicant's applying for 7, that's why it requires planning permission, and that's why we've got the application in front of us.
Okay, now the regulations, how many people were to be accommodated, whether it was 5 rooms, 6 rooms, 7 rooms. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lost my track now. Councillor Tandy.
The fact that it is stated in the report, and it's also Councillor Phillips has spoken about it as well, about this particular area being a conservation area. Does that not have any impact on the type of housing that should be allocated to a particular area? I don't know the answer, that's why I'm asking the question, Chair. The other problem I have is the parking issue, and Mr. Keeler has said that only 2 cars will be allowed to park outside. Well, I'm interested in how that can be monitored, because, you know, there could be 6 cars out there, no one would know whether they were 2 cars belonging to that property or 6 cars belonging to that property. So I do have some concerns about how parking for 2 cars, Mr. Keeler says only 2 cars, how can that be monitored?
Regarding the conservation area, that is one issue that we have to look at, and the impact on the character of the conservation area. But as part of this application, no alterations are being made to the building at all for us to consider the impact on that. And we haven't got any specific policies that restricts certain types of dwellings in certain areas. So the only thing that we could really consider is the visual amenity of the area. And as I said, the application doesn't include any alterations to the building. In terms of parking, the existing house doesn't have any on-street, off-street parking facilities, and it's a 5-bedroom house. It could change, as I said, advised earlier, it could change into a HMO for 6 people, which wouldn't attract any need for parking because the application wouldn't need planning permission. If the applicant is saying that he would restrict parking of 2 vehicles at the property, that would be something for him to manage as part between the tenants as part of the tenancy agreement. It's not anything the council could enforce.
Part there.
Planning, aren't we? Because looking at the parking thing, we could.
Sorry.
We could actually have this application not happening and it becoming a 6 people living there in a house of multiple occupation. As I understand it, there is nothing in law that stops one person owning 2 cars. So you could have 12 cars outside belonging to the 6-bedroomed. So this is the issue that we have. Let's be stupid. There could be 18. I had a family next door to me recently. There was only 3 of them lived there, but there was 6 cars in the close. Now, that's the thing. It's very, very difficult. Really what we're looking at, because they would be allowed 6, where really it's just that little tweak above. But some people might think it's a huge jump from 6 to 7. It's all different views on the situation. It's good old planning once again.
Okay, thank you. Is any other member? No? Claire? Nothing else? In that case, it's been moved and seconded the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as printed. All those in favour of that? And against? Thank you. That's approved. Item number 4 has been withdrawn, so we haven't got to deal with that. So all it leaves is for me to thank members for their attendance and declare the meeting closed. Thank you.